And
it does,
you know,
it
I mean,
does.
so you're trying to change that that feel, that image.
Oh, exactly, exactly. You know, that's what I try and do is like, and I mean, I try and base my. It's kind of funny to say this because, you know, I guess I do real life, but I, you know, ratchet it up a little bit. All of my heroes are based on guys that I've actually known. You know, I mean, these days fairy tales are so much about the princess and her beautiful dress and Cinderella and selling prom dresses. I mean, that's what people think of when they think of fairy tales. But I mean, you don't have a fairy tale, a good one, without a good hero. You know, and ultimately, the reason why fairy tales as a genre stick with us is because they're about Christ, you know, our Savior, who was the prince who came down and slew the dragon. You know, I mean, that's really the story that all fairy tales are about.
Right.
So I actually put a lot of work into creating good heroes, you know, because I really would like it if guys read this book and say, yeah, I want it there. You know, my first book, I want to be like him, you know. Paul in the Midnight Dancers, man, if only I could be like him. Or hopefully with girls, actually, 9 times out of 10 what happens is girls read it and they say, I want to marry a girl, you know, a guy like Bear, or I want to find someone like that, you know.
And this one, Shadow of the Bear, is set in New York City. Is that correct? More the modern day New York City. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea to put it in a modern day setting like that.
I was living in New York City, so it actually came very natural, you know. And the friars in Black as Night, well, I was working with the CFRs, the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal. So, you know, the plot just kind of worked itself out.
Now, did they feel funny about the idea of you know, the 7 dwarfs now being friars?
Oh, from what I understand, I think that they've read it, and I think that they approve.
They're okay with that?
I think so. I think so. I don't. It's kind of funny because some of them can pick out. There's little cameos of different friars that some EWTN readers might, you know, or watchers might be familiar with. There's some little cameos in there.
That's good.
Well, we've got to take a quick little break, and we'll be back. We have as our guest tonight Regina Doman. She's a Catholic teen fiction writer. So don't go away. You can send us your emails. We'll be right back in a minute.
For more information on Life on the Rock and other EWTN programs, visit us online at EWTN.com/TV. Each week, EWTN goes on offense against the difficult issues facing men in today's world on Crossing the Goal.
Hi, I'm Brian Patrick. Next time on Crossing the Goal, we continue our focus on living the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father. Our coaching team explores different ways that men can honor God through our words and actions. Hallowed be thy name. Next time on Crossing the Goal on EWTN.
Crossing the Goal, Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern on EWTN.
Hi, welcome to Life on the Rock, and tonight we're joined by Catholic teen fiction writer Regina Doman. One thing we spoke about earlier I'd like to talk about is this idea of writing the Catholic hero, and our culture. I mean, I used to think that, you know, just our culture just didn't understand goodness, didn't understand holiness. It was always kind of plastic and very veneer in our movies and stuff. But tell us, is it hard for you to write a hero as opposed to a villain?
Well, I think it's much harder for anybody who's trying to create fiction in the 20th century. Dietrich von Hildebrand, the Catholic philosopher, kind of put his finger on it when he said, he said basically the reason that this has happened is because our culture has severed the connection between beauty and goodness. I mean, most of us, we think about beauty, we think about goodness, and we think of them as two separate things, you know. But Dietrich von Hildebrand, for me, brought them back and said, no, these are the same things. I mean, who is the source of ultimate truth? You know, God. Who's the source of ultimate goodness? God. Who's the source of ultimate beauty? God. And I think it's the job of the Catholic artist to try and make these connections in people's minds between goodness, because what is beauty really but goodness that we can see, we can touch, we can taste, we can visualize with our imaginations. And as a Catholic writer, and like that's our challenge. We have to reconnect those halves of people's minds, that have been decimated in the culture.
I used the phrase when we were speaking about,
Yeah.
you said like, oh, that's what that looks like. I think of like a couple.
Yeah.
I remember a couple told me this. They were at Steubenville, and the guy was saying he was dating this woman, and they were chaste, and they had this happiness and joy. And people would ask him, "What are you guys doing?" That
Yeah.
And he said they were living the gospel, and
that's what it looks like.
Yeah, that's
right.
what it looks like.
No, that's exactly what we do. What we should do.
Now, in your books too, you talk about the struggle for holiness, right? And I think you hope that young readers will identify that it's not just this perfection we have, but we have.
Yeah. I mean, for Pete's sake, that's what John Paul II High is about, is kind of showing the struggle. In a very real sense, we as writers, we talk among ourselves saying, like, these books are about the sacrament of confirmation. It's about taking hold of your faith and making it so that you can see what it looks like, to see the Catholic faith in action. I mean, and these are not, books that are just all sweetness and light, because the Catholic faith is not about that.
Right.
And I try and make that point with people. When you're talking about goodness, I said, well, I talk to, kids and I say, well, what do good characters look like? And they're like, oh, they're boring, they're wimpy, they have a hard time visualizing it. I say, all right, well, look, you're Catholics, you're trying to be good, right? I said, is it a pretty picture? And they say, no. I said, is it easy? No. Is it messy sometimes? Yeah. I said, well, if you're a writer, and you're trying to write about goodness, write about what it's like for you to be good. And I said, just be real.
Right.
That's how do you find your way out of these two boxes, these compartments that the culture has put us in, where evil is fascinating and glamorous and goodness is boring and predictable? I said, well, write about what you know, write about your own struggle. I said, if you don't feel comfortable writing about yourself, write about your friends. I said, surely none of you are friends with evil people.
Right.
I said, if you meet a truly evil person,
right.
I said, it actually gets very boring. Like you were saying, the conversation, having, the dinner conversation with Hitler, the person who had a dinner with Hitler, and they said it was really boring.
Yeah.
Because he just wanted to talk about himself.
Now, you love a good romance story, right?
Yeah.
And you've taken that into your faith. And can you talk about that, your love for the romance novel? And
yeah, and it's kind of funny. It's this very, it's a topic that almost interests me too much because I write romances. I've kind of, I have a problem sometimes with the romance that's presented to teenage girls these days, because a lot of times, when you read a typical romance novel, and I love romance novels as much as the next girl, but, it can kind of be a head trip, It's about these guys who don't actually exist. This guy who's kind of meet all your needs and be absolutely perfect, and he's never going to smell bad, and he's never going to say anything stupid, and he's never going to hurt your feelings, and he's never going to want to go out and play ball, and he,
it's kind of all revolving around the woman, right?
Exactly. And I said, and in the end, it's not about something real.
Yeah.
But real romance is exciting because it's about that encounter with a guy who is not like you, who is not just there massaging your ego, but who is opening you up to new vistas, new adventures, who's taking you to that other place,
That's a Hildebrand theme, when he talks about the relationship between how they complement one another between the sexes.
I have to say, if I can give my promo, can I have Midnight Dancers? This book is my homage to Dietrich von Hildebrand. Seriously.
We have a lot of books tonight.
I mean, seriously. Yeah. This is my love song to Dietrich von Hildebrand, basically. Because that's, when I read him, and I haven't read a lot of him, but that was what I got out of him, is that, this is about the girl who encounters the other as a Catholic guy. She's raised in a very strict Protestant family, and she has not been exposed to a lot of beauty in her life because her parents are afraid of beauty. They associate it with glamour, and so they're like, no dancing, no dating, no glamorous clothes. No, you're going to wear plain clothes. You're going to wear your hair up, because they're afraid of the beauty. And so she kind of goes to the other extreme, and she's like, okay, I'm going to wear makeup. I'm going to wear the immodest dresses. I'm going to go out and do these dangerous things. And then she meets a Catholic guy who's just like, you need balance. These two halves of your life, there is an answer. You can put them together, And he kind of says in a very subtle way, and I try and be very subtle, in a very real sense, the answer is Mary. Because you see Mary, and she is beautiful, but she is goodness as well. And it's very there's a very subtle Marian theme. I don't do a lot with Mary in the books, but, it's trying to settle, and but there's something, the way he puts it, kind of, it fascinates her, and she doesn't know what to date. For a long time, she just thinks it's paganism, and she associates him with paganism because he's Catholic, and she's always been taught that Catholics are bad. And, so it's a fun story. It's a fun story. It's very summer romance, at its best. It's also my homage to summer romances.